There's a throne in the global economy, a seat of power that only one currency holds at a time. For the past 80 years, the US dollar sat on that throne, unchallenged, unshakable, the world's reserve currency. But here's what they don't teach you in economics class. There have been 7 reserve currencies before the dollar, 7 empires, 7 currencies that once ruled global trade, and every single one of them failed. Not some, all. Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, France, Britain. All gone. The average lifespan, 94 years. The dollar has been the reserve currency for 80 years. Do the math, and here's the part that should keep you awake at night. Each one failed for the same reason. A pattern so predictable, so documented, so obvious in hindsight that you'd think we'd learn. We didn't. To understand what's coming, we need to go back. Not decades, centuries. Because what's happening to your savings right now, what's happening to your grocery bill, your rent, the purchasing power slowly draining from every dollar you earn, isn't new. It's the final chapter of a story that's been told 7 times before, and every time, the ending is the same. The currency collapses, the empire fades, and the people holding that currency, they lose everything. Not because they made bad choices, because their leaders did. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes so loudly that if you're paying attention, you can hear the next verse before it's sung, and right now, the rhyme is deafening. Here's what they don't tell you. Reserve currency status is a privilege and a curse. When your currency is the global standard, when oil is priced in your money, when international trade settles in your notes, when central banks worldwide hold your currency as reserves, you gain enormous power. You can print money and export inflation. You can run deficits that would bankrupt other nations. You can borrow at rates that defy economic gravity, but that power has a price, and the bill always comes due. Because reserve currency status isn't earned through strength alone, it's maintained through trust, and trust, once broken, never fully returns. Let me take you to Portugal, 1450. The age of discovery is beginning. Portuguese ships are exploring Africa, establishing trade routes, bringing back gold and spices. The Portuguese real. Merchants from London to Cairo trade in reals. It's the dollar of its time. Portugal is small but mighty, controlling trade routes, establishing colonies, accumulating wealth beyond imagination. They think it will last forever. It doesn't. By 1530, Portugal is drowning in debt. Wars, expeditions, royal extravagance, they borrowed against future trade revenues. When those revenues didn't materialize, when competitors emerged, when trade routes shifted, Portugal couldn't pay, the real collapsed. Within 50 years, Portugal went from global superpower to economic irrelevance. Reserve currency lifespan, 80 years. Source: The Cash Nexus by Niall Ferguson. But here's the critical detail historians often miss. Portugal didn't lose reserve currency status because of external enemies. They lost it because of internal decisions. Spending beyond their means, borrowing against uncertain futures, inflating their currency to cover deficits. Sound familiar? Because that pattern spend, borrow, inflate collapse didn't die with Portugal. It moved to Spain. 1530. Spanish ships returned from the Americas loaded with gold and silver. Mountains of it, more wealth than Europe had ever seen. The Spanish real takes over as the global reserve currency. Spain becomes the superpower, the empire on which the sun never sets. They fund wars across Europe, build armadas, construct palaces, all paid for with New World gold. Except gold isn't wealth, it's a medium of exchange for wealth. And Spain, they weren't producing, they were consuming. Every gold coin went to imports, manufactured goods from other nations, food, weapons, luxuries. The gold flowed in and immediately flowed out. Worse, all that gold created inflation. Prices in Spain quadrupled between 1500 and 1600. Source: The Price Revolution in 16th Century England by Peter Ramsay. A chicken that cost 1 real in 1500 cost 4 reals. In 1600, same chicken. The gold made them rich on paper, but poor in reality. By 1557, just 27 years into reserve currency status, Spain declared bankruptcy, the richest nation on earth. Bankrupt, they declared bankruptcy again in 1560 and 1575 and 1596 and 1607. 4 times in 50 years. Source: Sovereign Defaults Before International Courts and Tribunals by Michael Wabel. Each time they devalued the currency. Each time, trust eroded. By 1640, the Spanish real was worthless outside Spain. Reserve currency lifespan, 110 years. The throne passed to the Dutch. The Dutch guilder took over in 1640. The Netherlands wasn't an empire in the traditional sense, no vast colonies, no huge armies, but they had something more valuable: financial innovation, the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, marine insurance, bills of exchange. The Dutch invented modern finance. The guilder became the reserve currency not through military might, but through trust. Merchants worldwide preferred guilders because they held value. The Dutch were disciplined, conservative. They didn't inflate. They didn't debase. For 80 years, the guilder reigned supreme. But then came the wars. For wars with England, wars with France, the Dutch borrowed and borrowed and borrowed more. By 1720, Dutch public debt was 200% of GDP. Source: Dutch Public Finance in the Long Run by Fritsche. They started printing money. Devaluing the trust evaporated. By 1720, London had replaced Amsterdam as the financial capital. The pound sterling took the throne. Reserve currency lifespan, 80 years. Notice the pattern. Each reserve currency fails not because of external conquest, but internal rot, overspending, excessive debt, currency debasement. It's always the same three-act tragedy. Act 1. Achieve reserve currency status through genuine economic strength. Act 2. Abuse that privilege by spending beyond your means. Act 3. Collapse as trust evaporates and the world moves on. France tried twice. The French franc became a reserve currency in 1720 after the Dutch collapse. But France was already deep in debt from wars. Louis XIV had bankrupted the Treasury building Versailles. Louis XV continued the spending. By 1790, French debt was 60% of GDP. Source: The Origins of the French Revolution by William Doyle. They printed assignats paper currency backed by confiscated church lands. It worked initially, then they printed more and more. Within 5 years, assignats lost 99% of their value. Bread riots, revolution, Napoleon. The franc lost reserve status by 1815. Lifespan, 95 years. France tried again in 1815 after the Napoleonic Wars. This time, they backed the franc with gold. Strict discipline. It worked for a while. By 1914, France entered World War I. 4 years of catastrophic warfare, millions dead, economy in ruins. How do you pay for that? You print money? French money supply doubled during the war. Source: The Economics of World War I, edited by Stephen Broadberry and Mark Harrison. By 1920, the franc had lost half its value. By 1944, it was worthless. Lifespan, 105 years. The pattern repeated. Again, Britain held reserve currency status the longest. The pound sterling dominated from 1815 to 1920. 105 years of Pax Britannica. The sun never set on the British Empire. British ships controlled the seas. British banks financed global trade. British currency was as good as gold, literally backed by gold. But World War I changed everything. Britain borrowed massively to fund the war. By 1918, British war debt was 140% of GDP. Source: The Economic Consequences of the Peace by John Maynard Keynes. They couldn't pay it back in gold. In 1931, Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound's value plummeted. By 1944, at Bretton Woods, the world officially chose a new reserve currency, the US dollar. Britain's century of dominance ended. Reserve currency lifespan, 105 years. And now we arrive at the dollar. 1944, Bretton Woods Conference. World War II is ending. Europe is devastated. America is untouched factories running at full capacity, agricultural abundance. Half the world's gold reserves, the US dollar, becomes the global reserve currency, backed by gold at $35 per ounce. Any nation could exchange dollars for gold. That promise that gold backing made the dollar trusted worldwide. For 27 years, the system worked. American post-war prosperity built on this foundation. But here's where history starts to rhyme. The 1960s arrive. Vietnam War, Great Society programs, Medicare, Medicaid, space race, massive spending. How does America pay for it? The same way every reserve currency before it paid print money. The Federal Reserve expanded the money supply, more dollars in circulation. but the gold reserves stayed the same. By 1970, foreign central banks noticed they're holding billions of dollars supposedly backed by gold. They start asking for that gold. France, especially President Charles de Gaulle, demanded gold for dollars. America faced a choice: give up the gold or break the promise. August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon appears on television. He announces the U.S. will temporarily suspend gold convertibility. Temporarily, that suspension is now 53 years old and counting. Source: the Nixon shock Federal Reserve history. The dollar went from gold-backed to fiat-backed by nothing except trust in the U.S. government. And for a while, that trust held. The dollar remained the reserve currency, not because of gold, because of inertia, because the global financial system was built on dollars, because there was no alternative, but the nature of the currency had fundamentally changed. Here's what most people miss. The 7 failed reserve currencies before the dollar all shared one characteristic. They were backed by something tangible: gold, silver, some real asset. Even they failed. The dollar, it's backed by nothing but confidence. And confidence, as history shows us repeatedly, is the first thing to evaporate when problems emerge. Since 1971, the U.S. has run deficits almost every single year. Source: U.S. Treasury historical debt outstanding. The national debt has grown from $398 billion in 1971 to $35 trillion today. Source: U.S. Treasury, October 2024. That's an 87-fold increase. The money supply has expanded even faster. In 1971, M2 money supply was $600 billion. Today, $21 trillion. Source: Federal Reserve economic data. That's 35 times more money in circulation, more dollars, same amount of real goods. What happens? Inflation. Not sudden like Weimar Germany. Slow, steady, relentless. Your eggs cost $2 in 2020, $6 in 2024. Source: USDA National Retail Report. That's 200% in 4 years. Your rent, up 25% since 2020. Source: Zillow Rent Index 2024, your savings. If you saved $10,000 in 2020, it buys $8,200 worth of goods today. Source: CPI calculator. You didn't lose money to a thief. You lost it to inflation, to the printing press, to the same pattern that destroyed 7 reserve currencies before this one. But here's what's different this time and what makes it more dangerous. Every previous reserve currency collapse was regional. Portugal lost status to Spain, Spain to Netherlands, Netherlands to France, France to Britain, Britain to America. The global economy continued. But what happens when the dollar collapses? There is no backup. The euro, the European Union, is fragmenting, debt-ridden, facing demographic collapse. The yuan. China's economy is slowing, property market crashing, capital controls preventing free convertibility. The yen. Japan's been in deflation for 30 years, debt at 260% of GDP. Source: IMF Fiscal Monitor 2024. There is no ready alternative, which means dollar collapse doesn't mean power transfers to another currency. It means the entire reserve currency system might collapse. Let me tell you about Sarah. She's a nurse in Phoenix. She makes $65,000 a year. Source: Bureau of Labor Statistics median wage data. She's been saving for 15 years, 20% of every paycheck into a savings account. She's disciplined, responsible. She has $80,000 saved. She thinks she's secure, but inflation is running at 6% annually. Source: BLSCPI data 2020. For her savings lose $4,800 in purchasing power this year. She earns maybe 1% interest $800. Net loss, $4,000 per year. In purchasing power, in 10 years, her $80,000 will buy what 55,000 buys today. She's not spending it recklessly. She's just holding dollars, and dollars are melting. Slowly, silently, Sarah represents millions, working hard, saving responsibly, losing ground every year. Because the reserve currency is in stage 3 of the pattern, debasement. And here's the terrifying part. We're accelerating. Portugal's decline took 80 years. Spain's took 110. The Dutch, 80. Britain, 105. But these weren't instantaneous collapses. They were slow erosions, decades of gradual decline. The dollar? We're compressing that timeline. We've been reserve currency for 80 years, already matching the average lifespan. But the abuse of that privilege, the spending, the debt, the money printing, has escalated dramatically in just the past 15 years. The 2008 financial crisis triggered $4 trillion of quantitative easing. Source: Federal Reserve balance sheet data. COVID-19 triggered another $5 trillion. Source: Congressional Budget Office, 2020 to 2021. In 15 years, we created more dollars than existed in the previous 230 years of American history combined. That's not normal. That's endgame. Every previous reserve currency gave warning signs before collapse. Trade deficits, currency devaluation, rising debt, inflation, loss of manufacturing base, political instability. Let's check the dollar's report card. Trade deficit, $773 billion in 2023. Source: U.S. Census Bureau, we import far more than we export. Currency devaluation. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. Source: BLSCPI calculator. What cost $1 in 1971 costs $50 today. Debt: $35 trillion and rising. Source: U.S. Treasury inflation. Running hot despite official claims it's transitory. Manufacturing base declined from 30% of GDP in 1950 to 11% today. Source: Federal Reserve, Economic Research, Political Instability. I don't need to cite sources on that, you see it every day. Every warning sign is flashing red, and we're ignoring them, just like Portugal ignored them, just like Spain ignored them, just like all 7 failed reserve currencies ignored them, because the pattern is always the same: denial until collapse. But there's one more element that makes the dollar situation unique and dangerous: the petrodollar system. Since 1974, Saudi Arabia agreed to price oil exclusively in US dollars in exchange for American military protection. Source: The Hidden Hand of American Hegemony by David Spiro. This created artificial demand for dollars. Every nation buying oil needs dollars regardless of whether they trade with America. This system sustained dollar dominance even as American economic fundamentals weakened, but that system is cracking. In 2023, Saudi Arabia announced it won't renew the petrodollar agreement automatically. Source: Multiple international news reports. 2023 China is buying oil in yuan. Russia is selling in rubles. India negotiating rupee transactions. The artificial demand propping up the dollar is evaporating. When nations don't need dollars for oil, what happens to the $21 trillion circulating globally? They come home, all at once. Hyperinflation, not theoretical, inevitable. Your grocery bill isn't just rising because of supply chains or corporate greed, though those play roles. It's rising because the dollar is losing value. Your rent isn't just increasing because of housing shortage, as though that's real too. It's increasing because landlords know dollars tomorrow will be worth less than dollars today. Your savings aren't keeping up because the system is designed to benefit debtors, like the government, with $35 trillion in debt at the expense of savers, like you. You're not imagining it, you're experiencing it. The slow-motion collapse of a reserve currency. History in real time playing out in your bank account. So what does this mean for you? Right now, today, it means understanding the pattern. 7 reserve currencies failed. Same cause: fiscal irresponsibility, excessive debt, currency debasement. The dollar is following that exact playbook. Stage 1. Achieve reserve status through economic strength done. In 1944. Stage 2. Abuse that privilege through overspending. Been happening since 1971, accelerating since 2008. Stage 3. Currency debasement to manage. Debt happening now with quantitative easing and inflation. Stage 4. Loss of confidence beginning as nations diversify away from dollars. Stage 5. Collapse and replacement. Not here yet, but the timeline is compressing. Where are we? Late stage 3? Early stage 4. The confidence is eroding, not collapsing. Not yet, but eroding. Every time another nation announces de-dollarization plans, confidence erodes. Every time inflation data exceeds forecasts, confidence erodes. Every time the deficit grows, confidence erodes, slowly until suddenly. That's how reserve currencies end, not gradually, suddenly. Decades of slow decline followed by rapid collapse Britain declined for 30 years, then lost reserve status in one conference, Bretton Woods. It happened slowly, then all at once. I'm not telling you this to panic you. Panic is useless. I'm telling you this so you understand. Knowledge is power, but only if you act on it. History gives us one enormous advantage. We can see what's coming. The pattern is documented, clear, undeniable. 7 reserve currencies fell. The 8th is following the same path. The question isn't if anymore, it's when, and what you do about it. Here's what I can't stop thinking about. Every empire that lost reserve currency status thought they were different. Portugal thought their trade routes were permanent. Spain thought their gold was inexhaustible. Netherlands thought their financial innovation was unbeatable. France thought twice they could maintain discipline. Britain thought their empire was eternal. Everyone believed this time is different. Everyone was wrong. America thinks the dollar is too big to fail, too integrated into global finance, too essential to replace. That's not confidence, that's hubris. And history punishes hubris. 7 currencies fell. 8 average lifespan, 94 years. Dollar tenure, 80 years, and counting. The math is simple, the pattern is clear. The warning signs are everywhere. Your grocery bill, your rent increase, your paycheck that doesn't stretch as far. History isn't repeating, but it's rhyming loudly. The question is, are you listening? So let me ask you this. When did you first feel it? That moment when you realized your money wasn't going as far. Was it at the gas pump? The grocery store? Paying rent? That wasn't your imagination. That was the pattern. History in motion. Drop a comment below, when did it become real for you? Because I guarantee you're not alone. And here's my real question. If 7 reserve currencies failed for the same reason, and the dollar is repeating that pattern, what do you think happens next? What's the move? The decision? The alternative? I don't have all the answers. I've studied this for years and I'm still figuring it out. Maybe you see something I don't. Let me know below. If this connected dots you hadn't seen before, if this made you see your paycheck and your savings differently, hit subscribe. Because next time, we're going deeper into the one move central banks always make right before the collapse. The move they're making right now, you won't want to miss it. Thank you for reading this all the way through. Most people don't. Most people don't want to know, but you do. That matters. Stay curious, stay informed. And remember, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, the rhyme is deafening. I'll see you in the next one.